Hey, Emily.
Hey, Stephanie.
You want to do a podcast?
Absolutely.
Welcome to Cycle Chats, a podcast to destigmatize what it means to be a woman. This is episode 20, Hormone Harmony, where we get to speak with Michelle Penicook, a functional and integrative medicine dietitian with a mission to help you live a healthy and symptom-free life using whole food nutrition, functional lab testing, and lifestyle changes. So let's get ready to feel better and live our best lives with Michelle. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
So I need to know what made you get into this field.
Yeah, so just going into dietetics in general, I always loved, nutrition and health. My parents were always super into it. And so that's, I went in to get my bachelor's degree in dietetics, and looking back to just, like how I viewed nutrition and back then, it's crazy how kind of 360 I view it now. Getting into the functional realm of things, I had my own health issues. As from cycling, I had horrible, painful periods. All of high school, I missed days of school. I had multiple autoimmune disorders in college that I developed. And then I actually got diagnosed with Lyme disease and lived in a moldy apartment in grad school. And I feel like I was so failed by conventional medicine, not put a bad light on them, but I really had to kind of seek myself a functional approach to all these things to really get my life back and be able to work and live my life normally again. And so that's what really brought me into that functional realm of things, because I'm a huge into why. Like, why is something happening? Why are you having those symptoms? Not just let's cover up those symptoms, or it's just normal, because symptoms aren't normal. It's your body's way of telling you that something is wrong. So just through my own health journey kind of led me to that functional side of things to really help people manage their conditions and live a healthier life with diet and lifestyle. And lab testing and all that stuff plays a role, but nutrition and lifestyle can really get you to a really good place with your health.
Well, you said one word that Stephanie and I absolutely love, and that's the word why. We love that word. We have to all start asking why so much more often. Don't just take what somebody says and then don't ask why. Always question, because without that, you're doing yourself, I think, a disservice in educating yourself more on why should I use this instead of this? What's the benefit of that? Why? So that's huge. And I love that.
Yeah. And a huge part of what I do is educating my clients. That's a huge part of what we do, because I think that nowadays people feel like, oh, well, I'm not an expert in that area, so I couldn't possibly learn or help myself. I feel like we just don't have confidence in our own ability to use critical thinking and know our bodies. So that's also with my clients, is you know your body. You are the expert in your body, and you have the ability and the brain power to learn about that and learn why, and learn to help yourself with tools that you have at your disposal.
Yeah, and I think too, another big thing is we've had a couple people say that is your body knows what it wants and it's telling you through these certain signals. So being able to tap in and to listen to the signaling, so to speak, there's no better word for it, that your body's saying, hey, hello, hi, I need this thing. It's like, gee, I wonder why I'm getting this headache. Well, have you had, I don't know, a glass of water, maybe put the coffee down? You can't figure it out. Let's say a new client comes to you. Where do you start? That's, I guess, the best way to ask it. Where do you start when somebody comes to you?
Typically what I'll do is we do a discovery call. So I want to make sure that we're a good fit and that also I can help you, because I am not an expert in everything. If you go to a practitioner who says that they're an expert and they know everything, run, because we don't know everything, but you have to go to someone that will do everything in their power to help you or get you to someone who will help you. So really going through initially, what's going on? What symptoms are you having? What have you tried? What has not been done? And then I kind of go from there, creating kind of a battle plan of okay, we're going to do this for this amount of time. This is the lab testing I would recommend to kind of dig into why you're having those. And then we kind of go from there. No one's approach is not personalized. Everyone's is personalized, and none of my clients are doing the exact same thing, but we always focus on kind of those baseline nutrition and lifestyle things that work for everyone. But after that, it's more personalized with lab testing, like hormone testing or nutrient testing or GI testing. It just depends on the person, but really just diving into what symptoms are you having. And then I kind of use my own clinical knowledge and knowledge I've gained from working with clients to figure out where do we go from here to uncover why you're having those symptoms.
What do you feel is the biggest struggle you seem to find clients come to you with?
So kind of two parts to that question is, one is I feel like a lot of women come to me after being kind of like I was, right? Going to traditional medical doctors and being told they were fine. That's really why I got into what I do. Also, is I feel like women in healthcare are often ignored or brushed off and told that, oh, you're just stressed, or you're a stressed mom, or your labs all look fine, so nothing's wrong, or that it's just normal, right? Like, oh, your painful cycles are just normal. Everyone deals with that, but it's not normal. And so I get a lot of people who are just frustrated being told that nothing's wrong when they know that there is something wrong. And so that's what a lot of people come to me with. And then when we go into, okay, what symptoms do people come to me with? You know, I see a lot of women with hormonal issues, whether it be just a painful cycle, a regular cycle, or people who actually have like a diagnosed condition of PCOS or like Hashimoto's or thyroid issues, endometriosis. I mean, it really varies. There's lots of different hormonal imbalances that you can have, so that varies. And then, you know, I do get some clients that will have a mix of different symptoms too, but GI as well. I do see a lot of women who have a lot of GI issues like bloating and constipation and stuff like that as well. I think we're told a lot of these symptoms are normal. And so a lot of them have lived a lot of their life thinking that that's normal, but they've been struggling for a long time.
Isn't that wild that women get so brushed off? I have a girlfriend she's a chiropractor, and she says it's not only as a medical professional herself. She says some of the women that come in will say, you're the first person that's actually listened to what I'm telling you. She said, that's crazy. And she has a neurology specialty. And so she always looks further into your legs hurting, but let's talk about what else is going on. She'll end up finding out they got a neck injury 3 years ago that went, untreated, and it all of a sudden now their knee is hurting, and it's all connected, and it's a neurological thing. She says, I still get talked down to, like my voice as a woman means less than one of the male resident doctors here. She goes, and it's crazy that we have to fight so hard. But what's even crazier is that these women who have been struggling with something that's really treatable hasn't been. And they get that relief within the first treatment. They start to feel that change. Why wasn't it happening sooner? I don't know where the why is with that and how we can fix it, but it's upsetting because this sense of oh, well, we're women, so we can hold more of the pain and it's normal and we're okay, and that shouldn't be. It's not like, oh, we're these crazy emotional hormonal creatures. Sometimes stuff is wrong, and that's our body's way of, it's like defense system saying, hello, it's the alarm, something needs to change, something's wrong here.
Yeah, and I've had a few clients where I've caught things, and I will obviously refer them to a doctor, but their doctor will refuse to run, let's say like Hashimoto antibodies or just other tests in general. And I'll catch things and I'll be like, this is not normal. You know, I don't diagnose as a dietitian or refer out, but it's just sad to see that you could have gone years of your life knowing that and making changes and potentially being on medication or whatever would have helped your condition. But doctor didn't want to run those labs that you wanted them to run, but they didn't want to run them.
Well, Steph, didn't you say every time a woman goes into the hospital and they ask her pain, they immediately knock it? Like if she's like, I'm at a 10, they're like, oh, she's at a 7. It's fine. Or knock it down rather.
They assume that the level of pain that they're feeling is exaggerated.
Yeah. And I think women are way more in tune with our bodies than men. I mean, I don't see as many men now, but I did. And it's funny because they'll come in and be like, oh, my elbow hurts. Or, it's like, they're just, and women will be like, well, they're very like, oh, well, at this time, this is how I feel. And then I kind of feel this at this time. And I think potentially a doctor might be like, oh, you're crazy, but you're just in tune with your body. I don't know. Men are like, oh, I've seen this floater in my eye for 2 months, but I don't know what it is, but I'm not going to get it checked out. But women, I think, are just more proactive and I don't know, in tune with their bodies, I find. So.
And that's not to say every man, because I got to give credit to my my partner because he listens to these. I am notorious for like putting off appointments for things because I'm like, I don't have time. I use the I don't have time excuse, which is stupid and is not real. It's just I want to sleep in an extra hour. And I'm like, it's one day, Steph, get up. So he's good about it when it comes to stuff like that. He's like at the minute something seems a little off, he's like, I made an appointment, I'm going in. And I'm, meanwhile, no dental cleaning in 3 years. And I'm like, I'm fine. I'm sure this pain in my tooth is completely unrelated to me not going in to get checked out. It's good. So but for the most part, yes. And I have seen that run rampant in my family where they just kind of like are like, can't walk up the stairs. Both my knees are collapsing, but I'm fine. A couple of Tylenol, we're good. I'm like, no, man, you got to go. I can hear the bones grinding together. Go to the doctor.
Yeah. Not to make generalizations or anything, but
But for the most part, I have to agree with you.
So I know a lot of what you do is to balance what's happening in your body. So what foods help balance, I guess, specific things in your body?
I share a lot just because I think it's easy for people to digest, like on my Instagram, like, hormone balancing foods or hormone supporting foods, because there are a lot of foods that I think are just well known, like, salmon and chia seeds and things like that, that I feel like have fiber and they have protein and things like that, fatty acids that help with hormones. But when it comes down to it, it's not necessarily the food, it's what does the food have that will benefit you, right? Like cruciferous vegetables help with liver detoxification, which then in turn helps hormones. So when I talk to my clients, it's not necessarily here's a meal plan, it's how can we build meals based on certain principles. So when it comes to hormone balancing foods and eating for hormone balance, whole food diet is like the most important thing, that you're eating lots of whole foods, lots of fiber, and minimal processed foods. And processed foods is also like a broad term. I mean, you could say processed foods as in, food that's been pre-cut and put in a bag, could be processed food, but then there's like Cheetos. So in the realm, processed food is not the enemy when it's convenient, and there's a lot better processed foods now. But for the most part, keeping those processed foods out, whole foods in, focusing on protein. Protein is something that I find most women are under eating. Focusing on good fibrous carbs like sweet potatoes and fruits and whole grains and things that contain fiber to kind of help with blood sugar balance. And then fiber, I've said fiber like 20 times, but fiber is super important for hormone detox. So just basing off of that guideline, right, there are lots of foods that are in those categories. But as far as when it comes to hormone balance and eating for hormone balance, kind of those guidelines are an easy way to follow. And I also go over, I know on my Instagram with my clients, like the plate method is kind of easy because it helps you be intuitive with how you're eating. But making half your plate, some non-starchy veggies, having a fourth would be protein, having a little bit of healthy fats too. I forgot to mention that earlier, but healthy fats are really good for hormones. And then having some sort of fibrous carb can be helpful too, especially for women that are still menstruating. Carbs are important for that to help with ovulation. As we get older, carbs are become a little bit less tolerant to carbs as you get older, kind of into that perimenopausal, menopausal range. But as far as women our age that are still menstruating, carbs are really important.
So during that week that you're menstruating, because now that we know that there's 4 phases, thanks to our friend Audrey, had no idea, something also that women should have learned in health class, but didn't, just 2 phases of the 4, ovulation and menstruation. So during the menstrual phase though, is there like specific foods that women can eat to maybe help with cramps and headaches, acne, all that good stuff?
Yeah. So kind of leading up to your cycle, you want to make sure you're eating things that are very like anti-inflammatory, because a lot of times when people are getting those like really intense, like either painful periods, headachy, it can a lot of times be inflammation. When you get your period, you will have what's called prostaglandins, which that can cause that cramping. It can also cause when people have like GI issues during their cycle too, but kind of plays into that inflammation. So really like magnesium rich foods are really important to help with cramping. Dark chocolate, that's why when people say they crave chocolate, oftentimes it's because chocolate is actually very high in magnesium. So magnesium rich foods, also like you can take like Epsom salt baths. That's not food related, but that can be super helpful in relieving like cramping. Omega-3s are really important for inflammation. So best forms of that is really going to be fatty fish like salmon. There are omega-3s in things like flax seeds and walnuts, but they're not easily absorbed into the body as like an animal source of those omega-3s. So those are two things that I can think of off the top of my head. As far as painful periods, zinc is also really important for that as well. So thinking off the top of my head, a huge list of those foods, those things can be really important during your menstrual cycle to kind of help cool that inflammation, help with cramping and kind of PMS symptoms, but also just rest. That's that period of just go become a hermit and just rest and relax.
That sounds so nice. I'd love to go back into my snail shell, hibernate like a bear. And that kind of leads me to something I was saying earlier about like, oh, I don't have time. So I know that's probably something you hear quite a lot. What's advice that you give to women who are really strapped for time and are constantly on the go, go, go?
I think it's about prioritizing and planning. So if you are really busy, whether you're like going into a week that will be busy, it might like an abnormally busy week for you, or you are just really busy, finding time to plan, right? Plan what you're going to eat, maybe prep some food. That's super important because you're going to be busy if you're always busy all the time, or you're going to have a busy week, so you kind of have to plan ahead for success, because it's easy to get caught in like, well, I'm too busy to do these things. And you have to dig in really deep and just be like, okay, well, I'm doing these things. Why do I want to take care of myself and prep and plan my food? How is that going to benefit me during the week? And then I also tell people too that while, meal prepping, some people are like, oh, meal prepping, I have to take like time out of my day to meal prep, but it makes the rest of your week easier because you don't even have to think because you're going to be busy. And then I oftentimes will find women who are busy and they're skipping kind of the same meals every week. I'm like, if you don't want to do a full meal prep, you can just prep the one meal you feel like you skip. So like whether that be breakfast or lunch are the two most common ones. Dinner, I don't really think people skip that as much, but prep that one meal. Just make it simple on yourself, but also asking for help, whether that be a meal delivery service or buying a meal delivery service that has frozen foods that you can pop out, buying convenience foods. Like this week I knew I was going to be busy, so I went to Costco and I bought some things that were already pre-made that just need to be heated up, or I can pair with like a frozen veggie or something because I knew I was going to be busy. So just planning and being able to prep and also not trying to be perfect. It's not, you don't have to prep these like Pinterest worthy meals. I mean, you can literally prep protein, veggies, and carbs and kind of build your meals as you go, but you have to figure out what works into your lifestyle, not necessarily what you think you should do. How is it going to work into your lifestyle that you can sustain and keep doing and not feel like it's a huge chore?
Do you feel like because you said the Instagram or the Pinterest worthy meals, do you feel like social media has set kind of an odd expectation on what it means to be nutritious?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think that we see all these influencers that's like, this is my morning routine, this is my nighttime routine, I'm eating all these foods and going and getting my daily smoothie. And I don't know, that's not real life.
Well, yeah, I mean, they're influencers, and that's what I always try to like remind myself. I'm like, they literally do this for a living. They are working to take these videos. Like, it's not like they're working a separate job. Like, this is what they're doing. So, yeah, obviously, they've got massive amounts of time in the morning to like brush out their hair, and they have a team most likely.
Yeah, I agree. And it's easy to get caught up in like looking at someone else's life and being like, oh, it's so perfect, or oh, they eat perfectly. But social media is a snapshot of, even for me, like I share a lot of healthy meals and things that I make, but just because I'm only sharing that doesn't mean that I don't go to Chick-fil-A sometimes. I mean, that's real life. I see so many people trying to be perfect that then they don't even start or even reach their health goals because they've just beat themselves up because they weren't perfect. But consistency isn't sexy, but it works.
I like that. And you said perfect, which is another word that ding, 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 the light goes off because it's something that Stephanie and I do not believe in. This idea of perfect. No, I don't think it exists. It's just this idea that was made up so that people could strive for it and then feel bad about that they don't get there.
I could come on here and be like, oh, I've never eaten at a fast food restaurant. I only eat vegetables and grass-fed meat. Seriously, like that's not real life. And I'm more about an 80-20 approach. And then if you really are struggling and need to kind of be, because there are times when people need to be a little bit more strict, you know, in a healing protocol. And I feel like at that point it's like 90-10, but it's never 100% ever. That's not realistic.
So for someone who's, let's say, needs to be a little bit stricter, how would you suggest them going about in a social gathering?
I always say that one, it's if you're going to go to a social gathering where you can bring food, bring your own food. Like I always bring my own food because then I know that I'll have things that I know I can eat that I will enjoy. And I'm not going to go like being sad, like watching everyone eat things that are delicious and I'm over here eating like a carrot stick. But if you're going out to eat, I would find restaurants that work within those parameters and, you know, scoping out menus before you go and just also like telling your friends what's going on. Like my friends have always been super supportive of any nutrition endeavor I've been on with my health and my health journey. And so they understand. If your friends don't understand, I mean, that's a red flag right there. But, you know, letting people know and saying, hey, you know, that restaurant, you know, I can't really get anything to eat there right now. Would you mind if we go here? Like providing another option. Or, you know, if you really want to, you can eat before you go and still go out and try to enjoy yourself that way. It's really up to what's going to make you happy. What's the specific situation? But, you know, there's definitely ways to work around it and just reminding yourself like why you're doing it. I think when you remind yourself why you're doing it and know there's a goal and there's an end in sight, because there's a lot of people that eventually, you know, I have my non-negotiables. I can't eat gluten, you know, my body rejects it. You know, at some point it won't be forever. Like most healing diets or restrictions are not forever, but it also becomes easier, I think, the longer you do it. And also finding recipes that replace your other favorite foods. Like I always ask my clients in our first like assessment is, what are your favorite foods? Because we'll always try to find, okay, like if we have to make restrictions, right? What are some things that are still delicious that you can enjoy within the parameters of, I wouldn't even call it a diet though. It's more of like some recommendations for how to eat basically.
You said you don't really have a lot of male clients anymore. Is there a particular reason that you've kind of veered towards more just women-based, or was that something that just kind of intrinsically happened to you as you went along your nutrition journey?
Yeah, I think it was just, I found that women are just more inept to potentially like reach for that help when it comes to nutrition. Because I think our bodies are just a little bit more complicated, especially with hormone wise too. We always joke like my dad will eat one less almond a week and he'll drop like 10 pounds, right? But then, you know, my mom will like be super strict and, you know, be eating super healthy and working out and lose like 0.5 pounds. So I think a lot of women just kind of struggle in that area a little bit more just because we're a little bit more complicated. But I think just, you know, going into the hormone side of things, I think it just kind of naturally happened that I saw a lot more women, but I think also a lot of my content is geared towards women too. But specifically, like we talked about earlier, you know, I think that there is a huge gap in healthcare for women, especially regarding not acute issues, but kind of chronic health issues like thyroid and hormone and GI, because it's often like, oh, you have IBS. Oh, you know, your thyroid is fine, when it's really not, because you can have subclinical issues before you have a clinical issue, or, you know, oh, just go on birth control pill, you know, and it's like, we're just not given options other than take this pill, or, you know, oh, it's just IBS, just stop eating gluten, or, you know, all the weird things that I've heard doctors say to people that just make them feel dismissed. So, you know, I want to be there to help them be heard. Like you said, you know, I don't know who you said, your friend, like your chiropractor friend, that they'll be like, oh, like you're the first person who's ever listened to me. Like I'll have women, when we do our lab review session, I'll go through the whole thing with them and they're like I've had women cry and just be like, wow, like I'm not crazy. To me, like that's so sad. And I'm like, I'm happy I can provide them with those answers, but it's so sad to me that like just running a hormone panel would make you so emotional because you were just ignored, you know, and like seeing that, okay, like something isn't quite right? Do you have some like disease? No, but you do have dysfunction going on, and fixing that will make you feel better.
Really just kind of makes you think, how do we fix that?
How do you think we fix this problem?
I think it's hard because I do feel like I'm not here to also like crap on doctors or anything like that, because doctors are amazing. I would never want to live anywhere in the world for acute care than the United States. But I think when it comes to chronic care, it's definitely lacking compared to other places in the world. And our medical system is just not set up, I feel like, for doctors to be able to sit down. I mean, they're in and out, and it's not even really their choice. It's like that's how our medical system is. They're in and out. I'm sure there are a lot of doctors that would love to spend more time with patients, but they just can't. And I don't necessarily know how to fix that, but I think that coming together, and a lot of doctors are very frustrated. I have friends that are doctors that will say stuff like this to me, but they're like, oh, well, people are leaving that conventional medicine and finding other practitioners, and those conventional medicine doctors really will be like, oh, well, they're not qualified. And it's just like, just because they're not a doctor doesn't mean they're not qualified, one. But two, like, they're leaving because they're being failed by the traditional medical community because they're not being listened to, or things aren't being dug into. And oftentimes, any sort of practitioner could be like, oh, well, I don't find anything wrong, so there must not be anything wrong with you. Instead of being like, I can't find anything, let me find you someone that might be able to help you.
I think that's an ego thing too. People are like, well, what I say is law. And if you go somewhere else, shame on you. How dare you? Because I am almighty. Like you said, if you go to a practitioner or, a doctor, and they're like, I know everything, I think you said run, because the idea of them saying, well, I know everything, and not being able to maybe claim that part of themselves, that they're like, you know what, can I do some more research on that instead and get back to you? That's actually stronger than saying, I know everything, making something up, and then like, just like screwing with somebody. That's not what it should be. It should be, hey, I don't know this, but you know what, let me refer you to this person. They'd be really helpful.
And it makes the community stronger too if you do that.
And I think as a practitioner, you have to put your ego at the door, and you got to sit down with your client and put your empathy hat on, right? And just know that they came to you because they're struggling, and they came to you because they think that you can help solve their problem. And I'm not a miracle worker. I can't solve everyone's problems. But as a practitioner, again, you got to put that ego away, and you got to, like you said, like if you don't know something, say, I'm not sure, let me check with another colleague, or let me go look that up and come back to you. Let me review your labs again, and maybe we'll come up with another plan, or maybe we can run some more labs. There's always another option, but oftentimes it's just, oh, well, your labs are fine, you're perfectly healthy. Meanwhile, they're like walking out, still having all the symptoms they came in with. And it's almost like they're playing with their mind, like gaslighting people into thinking that nothing's wrong with them. No one has ever come to me, because most people come to me, they're like, well, I was told I was perfectly fine. No one's ever come to me and actually then been perfectly fine. That's never happened. So whether it's just because it's not something that's like a diagnosable, like, oh, you have hypothyroid, or you have, Graves' disease, or I don't even, something that's like a set diagnosis, doesn't mean that there's not dysfunction. There's always dysfunction before a diagnosis. When I was in my internship, I was in the hospital, and I'm like educating all these people who are already super sick. And I was like, I do not want to do that. I want to get to people before you have a diagnosis to prevent you from having to be on medication or having to have a diagnosis. So it's just, doctors are getting people, and they're used to just being like, okay, if you have this acute issue, then I can help you. But we'll wait until it becomes a problem to address it, which is sad.
Okay, so I have a question. I know that you post about this a lot, but for those of you who don't follow, where can you find the best food to help with all of this stuff? Where do you think has the best products that you can go in and feel proud to like buy, support, and that you're putting in the best effort?
Like specific foods you're talking about, or like a place you could buy foods?
Yeah, like a place that you can buy.
I really love Thrive Market. I think that overall, all their products are really good. I think also just really learning how to read labels, like looking at the ingredients. Like I think everyone will turn the label and they'll look at calories. And I feel like calories is, while it's still important, I think is one of the worst things that we could have introduced the general public to, because it's like, we're so focused on calories instead of like, what are the ingredients? How much sugar is in it? What's the protein content? Versus like calories, because calories in and calories out is not the end all be all to health, right? You could eat a cookie, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You would definitely lose weight eating a cookie because you're not eating enough, but you're not getting enough nutrients. So really like flipping it over, looking at the nutrition label. I always look at how much sugar. Now the new labels will have how much added sugar, and looking then where is that sugar coming from in the ingredients list? How much protein does it have if that's a food that you're looking for to be like a staple of a meal? And then reading the ingredients, like how long is the ingredients list? You know, that's what are the ingredients? Because there can be a long ingredients list and it can be real food, but I'm looking for the most part, like if the ingredients are all like whole food ingredients, and no product's going to be perfect, especially if it's a packaged food. They do have to put some things to preserve and stuff like that. But I would say for the most part, whole foods that don't even have a nutrition label are going to be the best foods. And then if you're trying to buy packaged foods, you know, reading the label, I do really love Thrive Market. VitaCost is another place to get some good stuff as far as online goes.
So we spoke a lot about being a woman and dealing with all of these, being health conscious, but also not limiting yourself and all of that amazing stuff. So what does women empowerment mean to you?
Yeah, so I took this question in the context of kind of what I do and kind of all the things we were talking about. But one of them is, you know, women empowerment to me means like knowing your body and not body literacy. Like we said, like all these things we should have learned in sex ed class that we didn't learn. I think when women, if we would teach women about our cycles, about how food and lifestyle affects our cycles and our hormones and our stress hormones, we would all be able to make much more informed decisions about our health. And because when you're going to, especially if you're going with, you know, related to any of those issues to an OB, their first choice is always, oh, go on birth control, right? Which that's your choice, whether you want to do that or not. But having that body literacy to like know how your body is working and why something might be happening so that you can make an informed decision when you go to see your doctor. And you can also like weigh all options instead of feeling like bullied or feeling like something is your only choice. So really empowering women to like stand up for themselves and know their bodies and do their own research, because you again are the expert of your body. No one else is. And you can go to others to seek their knowledge and seek their opinion. But at the end of the day, you kind of have to be able to like weigh those options, what sits best with you. So really teaching women like body literacy, but also I think the other thing is to love your body. Because one, everyone comes in all shapes and sizes. Weight is this huge stigma and I just hate it. Like I weighed less when I was my sickest and I weigh more now. And that like took some coming to terms with, but I feel great, right? Like my new body goals and my health goals are not lose 10 pounds. It's I want to be vibrant and energetic. I want to have a painless period. I want to sleep well at night. I want to have a high body temp. I want to have a good functioning metabolism. Like those are all the things that I try to teach women, that like these are the things that should matter to you. And that doesn't mean that you shouldn't want to change your body, because I think there's that weird thing of people being like, well, you need to love your body where you're at. You shouldn't want to lose weight. I mean, you can want to change your body, but you also need to love yourself, whatever stage you're at in life. And that's so empowering. And I think scary for some other people to see women loving their bodies at each size and being unapologetic about like who they are and where they are. You know, I get women where they're not where they want to be in their health or their weight, but you still have to love yourself in that moment, because if you don't love yourself, then you're not going to love yourself in a smaller body. I've dealt with that. And I think most women have dealt with that. If I lost weight and I still didn't love myself, it doesn't matter. I'm still not going to love myself. It's never going to be enough.
Your self-worth isn't linked to your physical appearance.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a tough one that you have to do. That one is something I don't think anyone can help you with. That's something you have to come to terms with yourself and have a mirror moment to be able to say, you know what? I'm just, what could it kill for me to just love myself a little and be nice to myself one time? And then eventually you start retraining your voice to be nice in the moments where you don't feel so nice.
And all the amazing things your body does for you, you know, I mean, I have not yet, but right, hopefully later in life I will have a child, and I'm like, you grow a baby inside of you, and then you're like, get a lot of people postpartum and they're like so pressured to like get back to their pre-baby weight. I'm like, you just had a baby, like that's a trauma, and that's like an event in and of itself. Like give yourself some grace. Like every freaking catalog now is like a okay, I know Jennifer Aniston didn't have a baby, but for instance, like if Jennifer Aniston had a baby, they'd be like, 2 weeks postpartum, Jennifer Aniston back to her pre-pregnancy weight. It's like, like, why are you commenting on my postpartum body? Not like, wow, Jennifer Aniston's amazing. She grew and birthed a child.
One day, hopefully, that would be an amazing headline. What advice would you give your 15-year-old self?
Yeah, so I have 2 answers for that. One is I'm going to start it with a quote because it kind of explains what I want to say, but it's a quote from Dita Von Teese. So it's basically, you could be one of the ripest, juiciest peaches in the world, and someone is still going to hate peaches. And it's funny because when I got this question from you guys, and I was like, I almost like started to get emotional, and like I even get emotional now, like thinking back, like, oh, what would you tell yourself? Because I think as women, like, you grow so much. I mean, when I was 15, I mean, that's, 14 years ago, and I was a completely different person. And I wish I could go back and tell myself all these things that, stop living for other people, because you need to be okay with yourself and know that, like, I know my intentions are pure. I know I'm smart. I know that I am an awesome person. And if you don't like me, that's your loss, and to not live for people and live for other people's expectations, because it's never going to make you happy. And tying into that was, my timeline of my life might have not been like what everyone's timeline should have been, right? I took a gap year in between college and grad school, and I took time after, and it's like everyone had their opinions of like what I should be doing. And I just felt so like comparing myself to everyone else's timeline in my life. And I have friends who are, single, and they're just like stressing about like, oh, I'm 29 and I don't find someone yet, or I didn't have a baby yet. And it's like, everyone's timeline is so different. There's no timeline for your life that you need to be at. There was it wasn't a meme, but it was like an Instagram post about all these famous celebrities and where they were, right, when they're like 25, 26. And it was like, I don't know exactly what's like Oprah when she was 25 was, working at Walmart or something like that. And it just puts things into perspective of like, again, social media, right? We see all these people doing these cool things, and we just like, we put so much pressure on ourselves to live a certain way or be at a certain point in our life, but being okay with being on your own timeline and not pleasing other people and what their timeline for your life is.
That is so wonderfully said. We talk about it frequently, and we're just so thankful that you took the time to talk to us and shed your knowledge and your expertise, because I think in a small way, we did get down to the why with certain things. And I want other people to know and to maybe ask themselves why. So that leads me to the where, which is, where can we find you? And the what fun projects are you getting into, if any?
Yeah, so you can find me over on Instagram. I'm over at Hormone Harmony RD. My website is nutritionwithmichelle.com if you want to go there and check that out. Projects, stay tuned. I am looking to potentially do some group coaching and things that are a little bit more accessible than working with me one-on-one. So stay tuned for that. Hopefully that will get going in the next few months. It's just, finding time to do those projects is really the kicker here. But, I want to make all of this information so much more accessible and really help women empower themselves to educate themselves about their bodies and how they can use nutrition and lifestyle to improve their health and really learn to nourish their bodies. Because that's, at the end of the day, you nourish your body, mind, body, soul is my goal, to live your happiest life while still having health promoting habits that you do every day and you know why you do them.
Michelle, thank you again. I'm going to echo what Stephanie said. We know that time is precious and time is money and all of those things. So thank you for giving us, some of your time. This was, as we've said, very educational, but also extremely fun, which is what learning should be. It should be fun. So thank you for making this fun. Thank you for making it accessible and informative. That's really, really important, because hopefully women are going to listen to this and be like, hey, 80-20, buddy, like that's going to stick in my head. And also, there's no such thing as perfection. So just thank you a million times. Thank you. I know our paths will cross again.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so fun. And, any chance I get to chat about these things, I could go on forever.
So thank you for syncing up with us, Michelle. And for those that are listening, we hope you sync up with us next time.